Welcome to the Secret Life Podcast. Tell me your secret. I'll tell you mine. The best way to support the show is to subscribe and share. If you haven't left a review or ratings on iTunes, please do. It helps more people find our show. And if you want to be on it, please shoot me a note at secretlifepodcast@icloud.com. Welcome to Secret Life Podcast. I'm Brianne Davis-Gant, and today we are pulling back the curtains on all human secrets. You know, those little things people hide deep inside them and they won't tell anyone or anybody else for that matter. Those things we keep hidden that just, you know the how, what, when, where, why of it all. So today's guest is my good friend, Paul. Now, Paul, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What is your secret? Dun, dun, dun.
I'm a Russian spy.
Oh, my God.
Well, it's not anything that I've never told anybody, but it's something that I buried for a long time, even to myself. I'm 57 and I buried it for 40 something years. And it would be that I am a survivor of incest by my mother, not super overt incest, but a lot of emotional incest, kind of spousifying me, and a lot of physical boundaries crossed and stuff around the body, and stuff that is really gross.
Well, yeah. I mean, you and I have discussed emotional incest. I don't think people put a name to it. It's that feeling where, your parents, it's too much energy is given to you, or they do treat you like their spouse and you become their support system. It could be as simple and small as that. And, bigger, sexualizing your child a little bit in a way that just doesn't feel right. So let's go back. When do you remember the first time you just had that feeling as a young boy?
When I was 8 years old and she was taking my temperature rectally, and her kind of demeanor would kind of change. She would get very quiet. And I remember thinking, there's something going on. Something about this doesn't feel right. Why? I seem to be too old for this to still be happening. Yeah. And I remember just pushing it out of my mind and saying that my mom would never do anything like that. And it really stayed buried for a long time, until I really looked at the pattern of my relationship with her treating me like her therapist when I was 7 years old.
Like, what would she say?
She would break down and cry about how much she disliked being a mom and her marriage. And I would say, we're going to try to do better, and so from a very early age, I felt the pressure to be what my dad couldn't be. My dad was an untreated alcoholic, not a dramatic alcoholic, closet drinker, high functioning.
High functioning.
Yeah, he was an insurance executive, kind of Don Draper, but in the insurance industry, not in terms of the womanizing, but in terms of the big office, with the great view and a bar in his office and stuff like that. And my dad was just very withdrawn, especially as his alcoholism progressed. So I never questioned that her needs were put before mine. And that doesn't mean that there weren't good things about my mom and I didn't get good things out of my relationship with her. It was just a very, very complicated mixed bag. And she was a very emotionally mercurial person who had kind of no edit button. And for instance, this thing popped into my mind. I was playing cards with some friends of mine, and we were talking about because it was Father's Day. We were talking about our relationships with our dads, and it started off with, "Yeah, my dad died when I was 2." And another guy was like, "My dad died when I was 13." And I thought, "Oh my God, that's so much worse than anything I had." And then remembered, "Oh yeah, my dad tried to kill himself, and we had to check him into a rehab on Christmas Eve." I was like, that.
Did you forget about that, or and it just popped in your head, or you just finally connected that?
It wasn't something that I had buried. I just thought because my dad didn't die, it couldn't be that bad. But and my mom years later, and this is kind of an example of my mom's personality, is she said, for some reason we were recounting what my dad did. And my mom, like in a mocking tone, was derisive about the fact that his cuts on his wrists weren't really that deep.
Wow.
And I just remember just not having words.
How old were you during that?
When he tried to kill himself, I was in my 20s. Yeah. And I wasn't surprised because there was always a sadness in my dad. He was always checked out, always someplace else. Yeah, so it didn't surprise me. But yeah, that's the way my mom could turn. She could get really mean on a dime. And I know that's something that you and I share, that your mom could be very, very cold.
Oh yeah. But when I, gone through the therapy and worked with support groups and all that stuff, it's like, I then saw that her mom was really cold, and it was then, abuse and alcoholism ran in my family like rampant. So,
and my mom this isn't to excuse what she did. My mom had a terrible childhood. Her father left when she was like 3. Her mother was very cold. I wouldn't say a mean person, but very, very just emotionally withdrawn, and left her to be raised by friends of the family while she went to New York and worked. And she was left in an alcoholic family where I also think there was sexual abuse by a sibling. I could be wrong, but a lot of stuff. And one of the things that I like to always say too when I talk about being a survivor is that for a while, and this about me, I was a womanizer, I was a cheater, I objectified women, I pushed boundaries. I did a lot of stuff that I'm ashamed of.
Ditto, yeah. You know that.
Yeah, and I have tremendous regret about that. And I'd like to think that I'm not that person anymore. I've done a lot of work, and especially in the support group that you and I go to, because I don't want to be that person. I wanted I just had a sense that my heart was closed off. Even though I've been sober for about 7 years when I came to the support group you and I know each other from, there was just a feeling that I was going to live the rest of my life without really being able to open my heart and experience true intimacy. Because for me, emotion and sex were always separate for me.
Agree. Yes, that's
sex
what I say.
Sex was about control.
Yeah, sex is about power and control. It is not about intimacy.
Right.
And what I felt too.
Yes. And after years of being in our support group and a lot of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, I do feel like I'm at the place now where I can have that. I have a great relationship with my girlfriend, and I'm not afraid to be present. I don't have a fear of somebody overwhelming me. I don't have the desire to run. I really truly love our relationship, and I feel comfortable in it, and it feels safe, and she feels safe with me.
So when going back though, throughout the years, I always say like emotional incest is like a form of rape from your loved ones. They are like taking you of your energy. It doesn't have to be all,
Right. And your innocence.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Because you're playing a role you're not meant to play at that age.
Right.
So do you think that emotional intimacy or emotional incest really affected your relationships throughout the years.
Oh my God, totally, totally. It, I just wouldn't let people get super close. Another thing that I experienced that brought me tremendous shame was, and I think I've shared this in our support group, but I was about 12, I think, and I fell down and got a bunch of gravel in my knee, and my mom said, "Well, let's get you in the bathtub." And I remember thinking, I'm too old for
Yeah.
this. And I thought, well, I'll wear a bathing suit. And then I imagine what my mom would say, like whenever I would want to cover up or not want to be, naked in front of her or in my underwear, she would go, "Oh, it's nothing I've never seen. I saw your thing before you ever did." So then I kind of imagined, that was going to be the response I would get. So I didn't wear a bathing suit. And as I was sitting in the bathtub waiting for her to come in, I became aroused and I was mortified. I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I think that was probably one of the most seminal moments in my life, because I felt like a monster. I felt
Right.
like, what the fuck is wrong with me? And years later, when I talked to a therapist, they were like, you were responding to a sexualized energy. And it was your body. It was not something you didn't desire to have a sexual interaction with your mom. That was just how your body and your brain were coping. And I finally was able to let go of the shame after I got into our support group, but it was really pushed down and it pervaded everything. I just felt like, I remember feeling like a pervert from like age 6, because
Yeah.
sex was always on my mind.
I mean, me too. And I just have to say, when I talk to people that have survived, rape and all that, and then when they thought about what happened, they would get turned on and they could never connect. Like,
Yeah.
you were molested. Why am I having this reaction? And it's a physical reaction, and your brain can't, compute it.
Right. And your adrenaline starts, firing, and it's very disconcerting. It's very disconcerting. And there's a great book by a guy called Jack Morin, and I believe he's a psychologist. And the name of the book is The Erotic Mind, and he talks about how common that is. That in terms of what turns us on, it's very often the very thing that we dislike the most in real life, or something that we have historical shame or anxiety about. And I just want to say to anybody out there, we don't choose what it is that turns us on. It's what we do with it
Yeah.
that matters, And a lot of times you could role play with a consenting partner. It can be very, very freeing or to just, say, here's some things I think about sometimes that help me, reach orgasm. And having that part of you accepted can really, really add to intimacy in a relationship.
Definitely. That's what I think like a true connection is, knowing
Yeah.
those specific things. But you were also talking, there's a book, I think you and I read it, and I wish I looked it up, but it is about emotional incest. And I remember reading it. I'll tag it in below this episode. But
It's called Silently Seduced by Kenneth Adams.
yes, when I read that, I read it, years before I had my child. And I just remembering every parent needs to read this book.
Absolutely.
Just
Absolutely.
because they can, when I know now when I have a child, there's this love that I've never felt before. And there can be times if I wasn't healthy where I would try to use my child to fill me, like
Yep.
if mommy's having a bad day, mommy needs a hug, give me a
Right.
hug. And it's like, my child, that is not his responsibility to hug mom when she's having a bad day.
Yep.
So that book particularly helped me become a better mother, and not carry on the things that our parents have done to us, that their parents did to them, and so on and so on.
Right. Yeah, I don't believe our parents ever wanted to hurt us. they didn't have the tools to cope with their trauma.
Exactly. So holding this secret, holding this deep secret that you didn't even realize you were holding for yourself, you know, I don't think the seven deadly sins, for some reason, I don't think they're bad. I don't have that religious attachment to them. I think they're human nature. So pride, greed, lust, gluttony, envy, anger, sloth. I don't know if any of these go with this deep, dark secret, but have you thought about it? Do you?
Definitely anger, because I didn't realize how much anger I had at women for a long time. It wasn't like rage, like, oh, I want to hurt them, but it was more like, you're, why would I want to have any interaction with you if I wasn't going to get sex from you, which is a really hostile, awful way to look at half the population. I would kind of become a person that I didn't like. I would try to make myself appear a certain way to increase my chance of getting laid, say what I think they wanted to hear, never call them the next day, a lot of stuff. So, whatever stuff you want to apply to that would count.
Yeah, because
Being dishonest.
hurt people, like we say,
Yeah.
and that's, you were hurt.
And it doesn't excuse what I did, but now that I know better, I have the responsibility to not be that guy. And as I've healed, the desire to be that guy has pretty much gone away. Every once in a while, I'll drive by a massage parlor and I'll think, oh yeah, I'll have, romanticize the idea of, getting a happy ending or whatever, but I'm happy in my relationship with my girlfriend. So that's not something that I want. I look at it differently. I think when we come in and we're wounded, we think that the crumbs that we're getting emotionally in our life are a feast, because maybe they're exciting, because maybe there's danger or shame
secrets
involved,
or dirtiness.
Right. Yeah. But once I experienced intimacy, I viewed those things very differently, and I could see the emptiness in them and the objectification of the other person.
But it didn't happen right away with your girlfriend. Didn't you experience intimacy first with like a friend, a guy friend, or
Yes.
like me, we're really good friends. Like you started trusting the opposite sex and developing. Can you talk a little bit of that? Because it happens gradually.
It does happen very gradually. And it first happened with men in my other support group around drugs and alcohol. But I found myself, and I had stopped the first 7 years of being sober. I had stopped, any of my sexual acting out. And then the urge to do it started coming up again, and it scared me. And somebody said, hey, have you heard about this support group for stuff like that? And so I started going there. But I thought if the women in there really knew my history, they would want nothing to do with me. And when I did finally share my story one time, I felt so much regret afterwards at dinner. The group of us were at dinner, and I was just silently kind of staring into space. And one of the women said, what are you thinking about? And I said, I was just regretting how much I shared. And she said, why? I said, because, it's what woman is going to want to be my friend? And she said, Paul, can't you see that you did those things because of what happened to you? That's not who you are. And I broke down and I started crying. And
I know, I actually want to start crying right now.
That was the beginning of opening my heart, because I felt like, no, there's this last thing that I can't reveal, because that will make me unlovable. And that was a turning point in my recovery.
Ugh. I mean, that if that doesn't give anyone hope that they're not alone, or they can get help, or it can change, I don't know what.
Yeah.
Because
and you have been such a big support for me. There were times, this is for the listener, during our support group when I was processing the worst of this stuff, combined with the shame of how I turned around and objectified and hurt women, I would break down in the meeting and have to go outside to cry. And you came out one time, and I just was crying on your shoulder, and you just sat there and you just hugged me and loved me and didn't judge me. And that was incredibly, incredibly healing. And I can't thank you enough for that.
And for me too. I mean, I haven't had that experience with a guy. It was always about using guys or getting them to fill me or what I needed. And you were one of the first guy friends where there was boundaries, there was respect, there was healing involved, there was honesty, there was transparency. And I think that's what we need in this world. I think that's what we're missing in our society is like, we're all wounded and we have to have empathy and, non-judgment,
Yeah, because it doesn't mean we approve of something that somebody did. It's saying, I am here for you in your commitment to heal and become the person you want to be.
Exactly.
In today's cancel culture, while a lot of it may be justified and that person needs repercussions for what they did, there's a tendency to write them off as a human being and to not want to take an interest in whether or not they're invested in trying to become a different person. Now, obviously, it's very complicated because you're not going to go to their support group meeting with them. But when you hear somebody talk, a lot of times, you can get a sense that they are really owning their shit and that they are trying to be a better person.
I mean, I can agree and disagree because some I feel are, and I can feel it, and other
some
times
are psychopaths that I think are beyond.
We've talked about that,
right.
Especially in politics, but we're not going to get into that. But some are just crazy and they don't take responsibility for the action. But I also feel like, and you and I've discussed this, everybody has their own God and their journey. So if they were meant to get called out, that's their path and doing right instead of wrong,
Yeah.
But so keeping this secret from yourself, who do you think benefited from it? Who harmed from this secret?
Who benefited from me keeping it secret? Me.
Yeah.
I think probably my mom, because she was able to keep getting what she needed from me until I cut contact with her about, 8 years ago. And it wasn't because of what she did. It's because she refuses or is incapable of respecting the boundaries I ask her to respect today. And she's just not an emotionally safe person. And it's just not a healthy choice for me.
Which I'm very proud of you. Everybody thinks we should let family get away with anything because they're family, they're blood.
Right.
And we know, as on the other side of it, you have to have boundaries. And if people in your life don't respect your boundaries or don't take, my thing is, they don't take acknowledgement of what they've done. Right. There's something about somebody sitting down and saying, I'm sorry, I didn't know any better, I apologize, where it just there's room now to actually move forward in a different way.
Right. Because we all want to be seen. We all want respect. We all want to feel safe navigating this world. We all want to be loved. And it's not that much to ask, but some people are so wounded. Their idea of love is smothering someone or enmeshing. And it had never occurred to me that attention from a parent in and of itself isn't necessarily a good thing. It's what kind of attention is it? Is it a draining, overwhelming, boundaryless, energy-sucking energy? Or is it I'm rooting for you, I see who you are, I'm guiding you.
I'll let you fail. I won't try to fix it.
Right. I'll model humility and apologizing when I'm wrong. So there's a big difference there, and it's been probably the most difficult thing that I ever did in my life was to cut off my relationship with my mom. It hurt my heart for years. It would make my stomach drop when I would even think about it. But it doesn't. It makes me sad when I think about it, but it doesn't debilitate me anymore.
So how do you move forward now with this information and this work you've done on yourself? How are you moving forward?
I just keep trying to do this stuff that got me here. Go to my meetings, try to help other people, try to live a principled life, apologize when I'm wrong. When I screw up, not hate myself, but say, what can I learn from this? Is there some type of lesson I can learn, some type of, warning sign? Those are the important things, is to recognize my wrongs when I commit a wrong, apologize to somebody, learn from it, and then move on with my life. Because if I'm just sitting and obsessing about a mistake I made, it's not going to be of help to anybody, because I'm not present.
Yeah.
And I'm just self-obsessed, which is really kind of the other side of the coin of grandiosity. None of us are the worst piece of shit or the greatest. We're all somewhere in between. So it's just give it your best effort. Open your mind, read, ask for help. Somebody was saying in one of my support group meetings last night, the most powerful phrase I've ever learned is, I don't know.
I used to be scared to say that.
Oh,
I used to be scared to say that so much. I don't know. And
it was never uttered in my house. Never uttered in my house. And it's very freeing to say it, because I don't have to take care of everybody. I don't have to protect my ego. And it allows me to explore and open my mind and listen to what somebody else might have to say.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. I love you. I respect you. I adore you so much. And I really, really am grateful to have, because just you talking now it gives me the ability to say to my son when he asks me, I don't know. And that's okay. Like, I don't have to know.
Yeah.
So thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. This is Secret Life Podcast. I'm Brianne Davis-Gant. If you have a secret, past or present, and want to share it with me, please message me below or email me at secretlifepodcast@icloud.com. Until next time, thank you. Thank you again for listening to Secret Life Podcast. Please subscribe, share, send me a note, and you can always support the show with a donation on our site, secretlifepodcast.com. Until next time, bye.